Okay, so we're not going to focus too much on Mattel since we did that the last video, but there's a few more things I want to say, and especially since my last video is already out and I got a few comments. So, one person presented the fact that Mattel has the same financial issues as Hasbro does, and another person presented that with the Thomas franchise, that toyetic nature of that has disappeared. So, there's something to be worried about for Trolls 3 and Trolls as a brand as a whole getting merchandise by Mattel. And to this I say, we don't have any merchandise from them. We don't have any sneak peeks or anything like that. I wanted to get this video out very early just to see what they'll do. So, but at the same time, I do want to raise this question. I think that this will be a good engagement for you all in the comments down below. But what would you rather have? DreamWorks Trolls get screwed over by Hasbro for another year, and the brand just keeps getting worse and worse every time they're with them? Or would you rather have Mattel take the brand and possibly put us back to 2016 again, but just, Mattellified, And at the same time, would you rather just see new things and new approaches from Mattel than essentially be stagnated with Hasbro? I would rather take the latter. It's a risk, but, it's an interesting risk. We don't know. And I think I like that sense of not knowing, simply because, minus how DreamWorks was in the early stages before we actually got merchandise in stores, that intrigue of what was next was always an interesting thing when it was like the appropriate time to release merch and stuff. Because I remember at Comic-Con, we only got to see a taste of the merch, and it left me wanting to know more. And that's where we're at with Mattel. Just we don't see anything. So yeah, there's that. The next thing, I touched upon prices in my last video and just stock in general, and just talking to retail stores. Mattel is really bad when it comes to putting their stores, their merchandise in other stores that aren't like Walmart, Target, and Macy's/Toys R Us. They're not good like that, and that's going to be a huge problem when it comes down to Trolls, because Trolls was doing that with Hasbro. It wasn't just those 3 stores. They managed to put the toys in other places. Again, not as much considering what store it might be, but it was there. A lot of people got to enjoy the brand, and I hope that Mattel can do that, but at the same time, make things cost efficient, because, again, a lot of people, travel-wise, they might not be able to go to a Walmart, Target, and even a mall, so that might be out of the question. And again, pricing, these stores are, they offer good deals on these type of things, and most people will definitely need that. So that offering being there, it helps out a lot of people, and especially for the target demographic and their parents. So, I hope that Mattel can definitely have that offer, because if they just keep it to those 3 stores, I can tell you they're gonna be in a world of problems. Not by much, but hunting and finding for the toys could be a little bit easier, and at the same time, different offerings could definitely be great for different stores who, really need the Trolls brand, especially for the time that it's coming out, since it's coming back again in November compared to the release date of World's Horror. So we're done talking about Mattel. Now we can move on to the miscellaneous side. So I want to present something for you. A miscellaneous merchandise is very important to DreamWorks Trolls. And I've noticed that since 2016, and especially with something I brought up before, with the toys. One thing about Trolls is if the toys weren't there, or there was just a little bit of toys, not by much, but there were a few stores that did have that as a situation. However, they had a whole bunch of miscellaneous stuff. So they may have like shirts, they may have like a tiny little beach chair. They may have a whole bunch of DreamWorks Trolls stuff. And that was the great thing about Trolls back in 2016 till about mid 2018. Many different stores got to have the brand, and that helped them out a lot. I can definitely tell you this really helped your local dollar stores. Like, there are certain IPs that keep those stores definitely afloat, and like a few other stores too. I can't think of any right now on the top of my head. But again, it just wasn't Walmart, Target, and Macy's and Toys R Us before they merged together. It wasn't just them getting the Trolls merchandise. Many other stores got to have it. One problem World Tour did have is the fact that there just wasn't a lot to go around in terms of the miscellaneous department. However, there also was. It's a funny situation World Tour put itself in, and not a lot of stores got to have a lot of World Tour merchandise, and you can tell when they really needed it. Or at least they had a few, but you can tell they wanted more. So I generally think that this department not only needs to start sharing with other retail stores, but at the same time, they need to work on stocking. We've been talking about that throughout the whole video with toys, but this is a huge problem in terms of like the miscellaneous items like shirts and other things like that. And it's kind of a funny double-edged sword that they've put themselves in. Same with the toys. I didn't talk about this with the toys, but Trolls is a franchise that's popular, so of course it's going to sell well. But they don't release the same stock, or if it's still around, and other stores have it, certain stores just don't do it. And then you have online, and the same problem happens. It sells out, and like it's going to be like a long while till stock comes back in, which understandable. But there are just some stores that like they won't have it at all, and there might be a few other stores, but when you look at how like the quality of how many things that they have Trolls related, it may be like 2, maybe 3. So again, stocking issue is a huge problem. But I do want to present something that I've noticed with Zack Designs. Now, Zack Designs is a dinnerware company, and they do a lot of heavy lifting in terms of this department for many different companies. So Frozen 2 is a lot older than Trolls World Tour. Not by a lot, just by a little bit of a quarter year, but still a bit older. But yet, Zack Designs still manages to have enough stock despite the fact that they only maybe produced maybe 2, maybe 3 pairs of dinnerware sets and also cups. But yet, I still managed to see the same stock still in stores. And then you look at Trolls World Tour, and they're struggling to stay on shelves and also online stores too. So to me, this just shows yet again, a stocking issue is a problem, but at the same time, they don't want to produce more when there's no more stock. Now, currently speaking, and I think I touched upon this in the last part, but to an extent, I can understand. You don't want World Tour merchandise to interfere with Trolls 3 merchandise, but at the same time, you could create merchandise that just is under the Trolls label and it doesn't have to be tied to World Tour. We're seeing coloring books quite literally do that right now, and they've fused World Tour and Trollstopia together. So in that department, it shows that there's no problem, not to mention they're putting new renders on these coloring book cover pages. So really, the miscellaneous side really needs to work on a stocking issue and know when they need to make more. But I can also say this. These, like when they know that there's gonna be a new Trolls movie, like they don't allow, as I said, just to put the Trolls label on something. Like that's not a problem. Like people know it's still Trolls. You can just put it on there without like the second label, since we're in that, since we're with World Tour and we're still kind of in that era still. People know. Like if you see Poppy on something, it's Trolls. Like people aren't really stupid as they think they are, or even if it isn't World Tour, you could still, throw Barb or a few World Tour characters on there. Like, there's no problem. Not to mention, there's World Tour merchandise that still has, like, Trolls 1 characters on it and, like, no resemblance of any new World Tour characters. So, I really don't know what the issue is here, but it's something they really need to work on. Something, again, I touched upon in my last part in last video was the fact that, they definitely need a gender neutral and merchandise leaning to boys as well as they do girls. And the reason why I say that is, again, 2016 had this with the toys and even the merchandise. I don't get why by the time we got to World Tour, they started to lean more towards girls. Like, I can understand why it happened. It just makes sense in the context of, like, a lot of things. But the fact that there wasn't a boy offering is just kind of sad to look at when this wasn't an issue from the 2016 to 2018. Like, again, that mid-2018 period. This wasn't a problem. So I think they really need to work on this in the miscellaneous side. Now, the only area, which is sad to see, the only area that they really did this in was the t-shirts. Granted, the Zack designs were pretty neutral, but you could tell what side those merchandise was also leaning to. So, again, it's a double-edged sword when it comes down to this topic, but they could fix it easily. Like, there's enough boys in the franchise, there's a lot of girls in the franchise. As I said, that collect them all spirit is there. And I'm not saying it have a collect them all spirit for that type of merchandise, absolutely not, be smart, but at the same time, there's just a lot of characters at this point that there's really no excuse to have a little bit of a half and half, I a long time ago in a Trolls video, I talked about Paw Patrol, and I think that's a good example. Like, if, they have, like, in the middle merchandise and then boy and girl merch, Trolls can still do that too. And I'm going to be real. I think that might solve a lot of the stocking issues while also bringing back the boy fans from 2016 that felt very welcomed. I feel like that's probably the one demographic they probably lost during the World Tour transition. Minus the movies. I think that, the movie side of things are fine, but like the merchandise side of things, I think they heavily lost that side. So I think, now is a good time to start doing that. And I think that'll, like, in terms of like sales where they can need it, like, I generally think that, betting might sell a little bit better. Like, betting already sells fine, but you know what I mean? They could sell a bit more. There's just things that they could just improve on just thinking about it. Another thing, going back to that 2016 to 2018 period, mostly in terms of this is more of 2016 to 2017, almost going into 2018. Walmart, Target, and Macy's, they all had Trolls clothing for, like, juniors and women. And then by the time 2018 came, when, like, they dropped their, like, last few things at Walmart, they stopped. And I feel like that was the worst decision they could possibly make, simply because it sold well. Like, nowadays, if you want to look for that, you gotta look for it, like, pre-owned on, like, eBay or something. At the same time, Walmart reissued a 2016, like, I think they're like pajama pants, I think. and it had DJ Suki on it, and it had like the World Tour logo on it. So, it's very clear that they want to aim towards that audience, and they can. I generally think that they could still do the same things they were doing in 2016, and it'll sell well. And again, we're at a point where there's like a lot more characters now. And again, like, if you look at that merchandise from back then that I'm mentioning, like generally, like, look them up for yourselves. They're really cute. Like, they're really adorable. And I do think that, again, do the same for boys, just differently. And I could tell you this: when it came down to World Tour, while girls did get I mentioned those pajama pants, but that was really it in terms of retail stores. That's still sad that was the only thing that older fans got. But like when it came down to boys, like all we got, like if like the girls only got like the pajama pants from 2016 just reissued with the World Tour logo on the packaging. We got the old school trolls. Now, I don't have any issue with them. Like, it's the reason why this franchise is still going and the reason why we have DreamWorks trolls in the first place. But the fact that, like, they feel like we can't deserve the cutesy thing that's currently the thing that's putting trolls on the map is a little frustrating to me. And I hope, because I know that there were a few leaks for the not Hasbro, the Mattel merch. I gotta get used to saying Mattel now. The Mattel merch, and they did have a few old school trolls, and I'm definitely worried for that. I hope that they don't overdo that and say this is for the adults and this is for the kids. I hope that divide does not happen. But if it does, I know people are going to be vocal about that. But I hope that they know that you shouldn't divide the two and that everyone should have DreamWorks trolls. So, yeah, like, I hope that we can get a return to when we used to have, like, DreamWorks trolls clothing in the public's eye and not a hunt and find game. Because let me tell you, looking in, especially in the World Tour era, it was a struggle just to find adult shirts. And like, I mean, like, official. Like, the fact that I have to go on a hunt and find game online just to find that, when in reality, all I should do is look up adult DreamWorks troll shirts and should be greeted with results ASAP. Like that, again, like that's not really good. So I would say they need to definitely work on their adult shirt and clothing division and, make sure that the offerings are like right there in front of you, both in store and online. I think that these stores can benefit from marketing to the adult fandom, and they don't really have to do much, Again, like, all we probably need is a t-shirt at the end of the day, and, we'll still collect, like, the toys and stuff. So, like, we don't need much, but, offerings would be nice, and the fact that you offered those and then squandered it is just kind of ridiculous to me. So, yeah. That's the end of this part. In the next part, we'll be talking about Macy's.